welcome to another episode of TPA Legal, The Law and You. I'm Sershin Mudliar, and joining me again is Thiessen Pillay. Today we're talking about divorce. Thiessen, South Africa has one of the highest rates of divorce in the world. What are some of the contributing factors towards this increase in divorce in South Africa?
Sershin, there are a whole host of individual circumstances that are unique to South Africa that cumulatively compound the effect of our high divorce rate. We also have one of the highest divorce rates, and this is, like I said, because of all of these smaller factors. This could be starting from unemployment. We have one of the highest rates of unemployment in the world. Now, when a family's household is under financial strain, that causes strain in the relationship. The rate of domestic abuse and domestic violence is also, unfortunately, very, very high in South Africa. This has an effect on the divorce. Understand also that I call the South African tax, which basically means this is not the tax you're paying to SARS, but this is basically a family in South Africa would typically take on their extended family's financial obligations as their own. So you'd often have a family paying for the expenses for their cousins and their brothers' children, etc. And this creates a financial burden on the family. All of these factors now compound and result in a high divorce rate.
Many people assume that divorce is the first call for litigation attorneys. Is this true?
There is a misconception, I believe, that litigation attorneys proactively advocate divorce because it's a fee-generating means. That can't be far from the truth, especially for my practice. You have to understand that for many people in a marriage, silently behind the scenes is a lot of abuse, lots of physical, financial, and sometimes very, very dangerously high levels of physical violence. If you just look at the amounts of people that have passed on last year alone in the hands of their loved ones, that speaks for itself. So for many, divorce is a liberation. Divorce is a means to get out of a very toxic relationship, which sometimes is life-threatening for them. And divorce is also a means sometimes to ensure that you are doing what is difficult, what they're contrary to what society or your family would like you to do, but in the best interest of yourself, but more importantly, your children. And so for us, it is an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be assisting people in these circumstances to best advance their lives by expediting a divorce for them.
Thiessen, many people would want an holistic approach when it comes to getting a divorce. What are some of the procedures that you would advise on when somebody comes to you for a divorce?
I always advise people to settle. Understand, my perception is when parties have agreed upon a divorce or when they decided to divorce, they're already starting from a disadvantage, because there's always, the idea behind it is now to minimize your loss going forward. As it's always hoped that people can sit down at the very outset, calmly put aside their emotions, put aside their anger, put aside the resentment, put aside all of the negative feelings that would cloud them from sitting down and discussing and agreeing upon what is best in terms of a division, in terms of their respective rights to the property, to the children, etc., and contain that into an agreement. So I always advise people that wherever possible, try and agree upon what would be fair, see an attorney, have that reduced into what we refer to as a pre-divorce settlement agreement. That document now would contain all provisions, not just in respect of the children, but in respect of themselves and their property, parental rights. But for the children, we're dealing with who the children are going to be living with, what kind of contact would the other party have, maintenance, medical aid, education expenses, and. So the idea behind this is You have this meeting, you draft this document, the parties agree upon it, and then it's just a matter of issuing summons, having that agreement be made in order of court. If that is done, the process can be finalized so quickly.
Thiessen, what happens when both parties cannot sit down together and come to a compromise? For example, if there is infidelity in the relationship and so on, what happens then?
Session that also happens quite often. We have a provision in law called Forfeiture of Benefits. So if a party can show and that the sole cause of the breakdown of the marriage is due to substantial misconduct of the other party, then they could convince a court that the other party should forfeit their benefits to the estate from the marriage.
And there you have it. For a unique, holistic, and confidential approach to your relationship, why don't you give TPA Legal a shout? This has been another episode of TPA Legal, the Law and You. I'm Session Woodley.